Most men waste their suffering. They curse it, numb it, or run from it, never realizing it's the only force capable of rebirth. Machiavelli understood something few men ever grasp. Pain is power, disguised. The world trains you to escape discomfort, to medicate it, to distract from it, to drown it in pleasure. But every empire, every revolution, every legend you admire was born from agony, refined into purpose. Your suffering isn't punishment. It's information. It's revealing exactly what must die inside you so something greater can take its place. Stop asking life to be kind. Ask it to make you unrecognizable. Because the moment you stop running from pain, you start controlling it. And when you control pain, you control your evolution. 1. Pain is the real teacher. Comfort is the lie. Every lesson that ever made you dangerous came wrapped in pain. The betrayal that taught you loyalty. The failure that taught you focus. The heartbreak that burned away illusion. Comfort never taught you anything. It only softened you. Pain is the great sculptor of men. It strips away your vanity, your delusion, your laziness, until all that's left is what's real. The problem is that modern life has trained you to see pain as an error, something to be avoided, medicated, or escaped. But Machiavelli would call that ignorance, because a man who avoids suffering also avoids wisdom. Think about it. Every predator in nature sharpens itself through struggle. The lion becomes a hunter through hunger. The eagle learns precision through the fight against wind. Even steel becomes unbreakable only after surviving fire. Comfort, on the other hand, is slow death disguised as pleasure. It gives you dopamine without discipline, status without struggle, validation without victory. It convinces you that ease is the goal, when in truth it's the cage. Pain doesn't come to destroy you, it comes to evolve you. It's the universe's brutal form of mentorship. When everything is taken away, the job, the relationship, the illusion of control, what's left is raw awareness. That's when you finally see yourself without masks. Machiavelli understood that power requires scars. He believed men become wise not by reading philosophy, but by enduring consequences. Suffering, when faced with discipline, transforms emotion into intellect. It turns instinct into calculation. The comfort seeker runs from pain and stays soft. The strategist studies pain and becomes lethal. When you start using your pain as fuel, it changes the way you move through life. You stop reacting. You start refining. You stop asking, why me? And start asking, what is this teaching me? You stop needing motivation because the fire within you never goes out. Every discomfort is an invitation to mastery. Every heartbreak is a chance to harden your emotional armor. Every failure is a test, not of your worth, but of your willingness to continue. If you keep choosing comfort, you'll live safely and die forgettable. But if you embrace pain, you'll forge something indestructible, character that cannot be manipulated. Pain is not the enemy. It's the process. And until you respect it, you'll stay trapped in cycles of weakness disguised as peace. Because the truth is simple. Men who run from pain become servants. Men who harness it become kings. 2. The weak seek relief, the strong seek reason. Most people's first instinct when pain hits is escape. They numb it with distraction, drown it with pleasure, or hide it behind fake positivity. They call it self-care, but it's really self-sabotage. Because the weak man's highest goal is relief, not growth. He doesn't want to understand his pain. He just wants it gone. But the moment you silence suffering, you also silence the lesson hidden inside it. Pain isn't random. It's a mirror. It shows you exactly where you've been avoiding truth. If you pay attention, every wound carries information about your habits, your attachments, your illusions. The strong don't run from pain. They study it like scientists. They analyze its message, extract its data, and turn it into advantage. That's where transformation begins. Think of how a general studies defeat. He doesn't cry about losing the battle. He sits in the ashes, examines every mistake, and makes sure he never repeats it again. That's how strategy is born, through the courage to face pain without flinching. Machiavelli understood this. He believed wisdom was carved from adversity. The strong use reason to dissect what others react to emotionally. They see the cause beneath the chaos, the pattern beneath the pain. When you face a setback, a betrayal, a failure, a rejection, you can either curse it or question it. The weak curse, the strong question. They ask, what truth was I refusing to see before this happened? What pattern am I repeating that led me here again? What skill, what discipline, what coldness must I now develop to never suffer this same wound twice? That's what separates the ruled from the rulers. Relief gives you comfort today. Reason gives you control forever. The moment you start seeking reason over relief, your relationship with pain changes. It stops being something that happens to you and becomes something that works for you. Pain becomes a feedback system, a signal that something inside you needs refinement. And refinement is the foundation of strength. When you analyze your pain, you rob it of its power to manipulate you. You strip it of emotion and turn it into logic. That's how warriors, entrepreneurs, and thinkers all rise, through cold analysis, not emotional reaction. Most men today can't handle this truth because they're addicted to instant anesthesia. They've been taught that any discomfort is failure, but that's exactly why they stay powerless, because they never look beneath the surface long enough to evolve. The strong man doesn't ask for pity. He sits in solitude, looks his pain in the eye, and demands explanation. He doesn't pray for the storm to end. He studies its pattern so he can control it next time. If you seek only relief, you stay a victim. If you seek reason, you become a strategist. And that's the difference between the man who spends his life escaping himself and the man who becomes uncheckable, unreactive, untouchable. Because when you finally understand why something hurt you, it can never hurt you the same way again. That's the alchemy of suffering. The moment you replace emotion with examination, pain turns into power. So the next time life hits you, don't rush to escape it. Freeze, observe, study, and ask yourself one question. What is this pain trying to teach me that comfort never could? That's how Machiavellian men evolve, not by avoiding suffering, but by mastering its meaning. 3. Misery is energy, waiting to be directed. Misery isn't weakness, it's raw, unrefined power. It's the emotional firestorm that tears everything comfortable apart. Most men waste it crying, complaining, or waiting for sympathy. But the rare few, the dangerous ones, learn to redirect it. Because misery itself is neutral. It only becomes destructive when it has nowhere to go. Unfocused pain devours you. Directed pain defines you. When Machiavelli observed power, He saw that suffering was the birthplace of greatness. Every man who rose from nothing had one thing in common. He didn't run from his misery. He harnessed it, turned it into a relentless drive to control the very forces that once humiliated him. That's the secret most never learn. Pain is energy. Energy demands motion. If you don't give it a mission, it consumes you. The world tells you to heal, forgive, or move on. But that advice often means dilute your fire. You can't heal by becoming softer. You heal by giving your suffering a purpose. You lost someone? Build something in their honor. You failed? Use that shame to fuel relentless skill building. You were rejected? Transform the rejection into a hunger for mastery so severe that the world has no choice but to notice. Every emotion carries voltage. Misery just happens to carry the highest charge. And when that charge is converted into creation, obsession, discipline, evolution, you become unstoppable. Look at history's greats. Every empire was born from suffering. Every masterpiece from heartbreak. Every transformation from rage. It's not a coincidence. Pain is the most honest energy on earth. It strips away illusion. It exposes what you truly value. It burns away weakness, excuses, and distractions. The weak drown in their pain because they feel it. The strong rise because they use it. Misery, when directed, becomes momentum. It gives you tunnel vision. It makes you immune to comfort. Immune to distraction. You stop needing motivation because the wound itself becomes your fuel source. That's how obsession is born. Most men look for inspiration from books, podcasts, or idols. But the most powerful inspiration is rage refined into purpose. It's when you wake up with that quiet voice saying, "I refuse to end where they left me." That's not positivity. That's power. The rich don't always work harder. They work from hunger. The conqueror doesn't train longer. He trains from vengeance. And the stoic doesn't meditate to feel peace. He meditates to control the chaos that misery gave him. If you look closely, all greatness is structured suffering. Every discipline, every routine, every empire is simply pain reorganized into precision. Machiavelli would call it cold transformation, turning weakness into weaponry. You see, misery doesn't ask for your permission. It visits everyone, but it tests you with a question. Will you drown in me, or will you drive with me? That decision determines who you become. When you stop seeing misery as punishment, it turns into propulsion. When you stop crying over the weight, you realize it's what forges your form. You stop asking, "Why me?" and start saying, "Now, watch me." That's when you cross the invisible line from victim to creator. And once you do, everything shifts. You no longer fear suffering because you know it's just potential energy in disguise. You know how to convert it. You've done it before. That's why the most dangerous men on earth have suffered deeply and survived consciously. They took their misery, weaponized it, and made it their identity. The lesson is simple. Don't let misery rot. Refine it. Don't let pain paralyze. Channel it. Because the same emotion that breaks men is the same one that crowns kings. 4. Stop asking, "Why me?" Start asking, "What now?" The question, "Why me?" is the anthem of the powerless. It's the song of the man who still believes life owes him fairness. But life isn't fair, it's strategic. It doesn't reward the emotional. It rewards the adaptable. Every time you ask, why me? You hand your power to circumstance. You label yourself a victim of something you were meant to master. And the longer you stay there, in that cycle of self-pity, resentment, and regret, the more your strength decays. Self-pity isn't healing. It's emotional decay disguised as reflection. It turns your mind into a loop that feeds weakness. You start rehearsing your pain instead of repurposing it. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. The world doesn't care about your wounds. It only respects what you build from them. The Machiavellian mind doesn't cry over fate. It bends it until it serves him. When pain hits, most people look for sympathy. The strategist looks for angles. He studies the wreckage. He identifies what can be salvaged, what must be burned, and what must be built next. That shift from emotion to evaluation is the birth of inner power. Because once you stop asking, why me? And start asking, what now? Your suffering becomes data. It stops being personal and starts being practical. Every scar becomes information. Every failure becomes a feedback loop. The Machiavellian doesn't waste pain. He profits from it. You see, the universe doesn't choose victims. It chooses candidates and tests them. Every hardship is an invitation to reinvent, not to escape, but to evolve. When something collapses, a relationship, a job, a version of yourself, it's not destruction. It's exposure. It's life showing you what was fragile. It's the audit before the empire. But most men never rebuild because they drown in self-pity. They want the world to apologize before they move forward. And that's why they stay average. Because evolution never apologizes. It demands obedience. Here's a truth that will harden your soul. Life doesn't care who you are. It only cares what you become when it hits you. You were never meant to be spared. You were meant to be shaped. The pain you carry, it's not a punishment. It's the test of whether you're worthy of command. So when everything falls apart, don't ask, why me? Ask, what's the strategy? What can I build from this? What lesson hides inside this humiliation? What version of me must die for the next one to rise? Those are the questions that turn breakdowns into blueprints. The Machiavellian mind is emotionally cold for a reason, not because it lacks feeling, but because it refuses to waste it. Every emotion must serve evolution, or it's useless. That's why the strategist doesn't linger in grief. He extracts meaning from it and keeps moving. That's why he doesn't seek revenge through anger, but through dominance. He doesn't just want to survive pain, he wants to weaponize it. Think of history's greatest transformations. Every empire began with a man who refused to drown in despair. He was betrayed, exiled, broken, and yet he turned that chaos into architecture. You can't evolve by staying the same. Something inside you must die. Comfort, dependency, or emotional indulgence for something sharper to take its place. That's what now really means. It's not resignation. It's reconstruction. It's saying, if this is the game, then I'll master it. So when pain comes, stop looking for meaning through misery. Start creating meaning through motion. Every time you ask, what now, instead of why me, you build a muscle, the muscle of self-command. That's how you become dangerous, because nothing external can control a man who sees every obstacle as leverage. The world breaks those who ask, why? it builds those who act on now. Machiavelli would call it strategic suffering, pain repurposed for power. And that's your new rule. Don't cry over what fell. Calculate what can rise. Because fate doesn't favor the emotional. It favors the ruthless. And ruthlessness isn't cruelty. It's clarity. So next time life hits you, don't say, "Why me?" Say, "Perfect. Let's see what I become." 5. Betrayal is the birthplace of power. Betrayal is not the end of loyalty. It's the beginning of wisdom. Most men let betrayal poison them. The Machiavellian lets it refine him. Every time someone breaks you, they hand you information, a map of weakness, both theirs and yours. They reveal what they thought would destroy you, what they believed was your limit. And in that moment of exposure, you gain something they'll never have: clarity. Betrayal isn't just emotional pain, it's psychological X-ray vision. It shows you who's fake, who's fearful, and who's feeding off your loyalty. It strips away illusion faster than any success ever could. When someone betrays you, they're not ending your story. They're upgrading your strategy. Because once you've seen how disloyalty operates, you can't be manipulated by it again. Most people waste betrayal. They drown in self-pity, replaying the scene over and over, wishing it had gone differently. They want closure, apologies, or revenge, all forms of emotional dependency. The strategist wants none of that. He doesn't want closure. He wants clarity. He studies the betrayal like an assassin studies a wound, not to mourn it, but to make sure he never gets cut the same way again. Every betrayal becomes data, every lie a lesson, every loss an audit of who deserves access. And when you start thinking this way, pain becomes precision. Machiavelli would say betrayal is inevitable because loyalty is a currency, and currencies devalue over time. People change their allegiance when it no longer benefits them. To expect otherwise is to live like a child in a world run by wolves. The wise don't seek eternal loyalty. They build systems that make betrayal irrelevant. They create leverage so strong that no one's disloyalty can collapse them. That's why betrayal doesn't destroy the powerful, it crowns them. It strips them of illusion, emotion, and dependence, leaving behind something colder, and therefore uncheckable. Think of what betrayal really is, a forced awakening. You thought someone was solid. You thought the bond was mutual. And then, in one clean cut, you see the truth that everyone acts out of self-interest, including you. At first, that realization burns. Then it frees you. Because once you accept that loyalty is conditional, you stop expecting purity in a world built on power dynamics. You stop living with open hands and start walking with closed fists, not in hatred, but in awareness. Here's what most men never understand. Betrayal doesn't just show you who they are. It shows you who you were, naive, trusting, blind to motive. It's not them you should hate. It's the version of yourself that ignored the red flags. That's the weakness you need to kill. Because the goal isn't to stay innocent. It's to stay informed. The calmest, most dangerous men are those who've seen betrayal up close and learned to expect it, not fear it. That's why they move differently. They don't overshare. They don't trust easily. And when the knife comes again, they're already 3 moves ahead. Every empire was born through betrayal. Julius Caesar was stabbed by the men he fed, Napoleon was abandoned by the nation he raised, and every one of them, in their own way, learned that power demands solitude. You can't rule while needing to be understood. You can't ascend while clinging to emotional debts. The strategist learns to convert betrayal into calculation. He doesn't ask, "How could they do this?" He asks, "What did I miss, and how can I use this?" That mindset is what separates the fallen from the feared. When someone betrays you, you're being handed two gifts: clarity about them, calibration for yourself. You now know who to cut off, who to replace, and what to fortify. You now understand how people operate when they believe you're weak. And you now have the emotional detachment to build without illusion. That's not tragedy, that's training. So the next time someone betrays you, don't crumble. Don't seek revenge through chaos. Revenge isn't shouting louder, it's rising higher. It's letting them watch as your absence costs them more than your loyalty ever did. Betrayal didn't break you, it introduced you to your potential. It ended your dependence and initiated your dominance. Because the moment you stop bleeding over betrayal, you start building the empire that will outlive it. 6. Isolation isn't punishment, it's preparation. Most people fear being alone because they've never met themselves without distraction. They mistake silence for loneliness, when in reality, it's the forge of transformation. The weak run from solitude because they can't face the noise in their own mind. The strong retreat into it because that's where the real war is fought. When the world turns its back on you, don't panic. That silence isn't rejection, it's a signal, a calling. The universe isolates those it's about to rebuild. Isolation feels like death at first. You'll feel abandoned, forgotten, stripped of meaning. Your phone will go quiet, your circle will shrink, and your routine will fall apart. That's because everything that once defined you is being dismantled. You're not losing people, you're losing illusions. The illusion that you needed constant validation. The illusion that peace comes from attention. The illusion that connection means closeness. You're being forced to build from the inside out, not the outside in. Machiavelli understood solitude as a strategic weapon. He knew that leaders who can't stand silence become slaves to noise, and noise is easy to control. Every king, philosopher, and general in history has spent time in exile or isolation before rising. Why? Because power requires distance. In solitude, you start hearing things others can't. Your instincts sharpen. Your focus tightens. Your mind stops reacting and starts creating. What once felt like emptiness becomes a laboratory. The silence becomes a mirror, and in that mirror you start seeing the man beneath the masks. You'll notice something strange in isolation. Your tolerance for nonsense evaporates. The gossip, the validation cycles, the fake urgency of life, it all begins to disgust you. You become surgical about your time, ruthless about your energy. You stop chasing everything that used to chase you. That's the moment your transformation begins. Not when you find new people, but when you realize you don't need them. Solitude breeds power because it removes dependency. It kills the part of you that needs to be understood before it acts. It teaches you to lead yourself before leading others. Think of isolation as a cocoon, ugly, quiet, uncomfortable. But inside it, something divine is happening. Your identity is dying. Your old fears are starving. And a new, colder, calmer version of you is forming. one that no longer bends to emotion or noise. The man who can thrive alone becomes untouchable in a crowd. He doesn't need reassurance. He doesn't need attention. And because he doesn't need, he controls. That's why solitude is feared by the weak and sought by the wise. Every great strategist retreats before he conquers. He steps back to see the battlefield clearer than everyone else. Isolation gives you altitude, and from that height you see patterns the masses never will. When you're surrounded by people, your perception is polluted. When you're alone, your perception becomes precise. You start to see who was using you, who was draining you, and who was distracting you. You see what truly matters and what never did. But understand this, isolation isn't meant to be permanent. It's a phase, the construction site of self-mastery. Once you've rebuilt, you re-emerge, colder, wiser, disciplined, and dangerous. Those who once pitied your silence will eventually fear your return, because the man who walks out of solitude isn't the same one who walked in. He doesn't need the world's approval anymore. He doesn't beg for belonging. He carries his own atmosphere and people can feel it. That's why the Machiavellian doesn't see isolation as punishment. He sees it as preparation, the sharpening of the blade before the war, the strengthening of the roots before the storm. So if you're alone right now, good. You've been chosen for reconstruction. You're not being buried. You're being built. Sit in the silence. Study the thoughts that surface. Kill the ones that keep you weak. And when the time comes to return, you'll no longer be looking for the world's validation. The world will be looking for yours. 7. Forgive nothing, but learn everything. Forgiveness has become one of the most misunderstood virtues of our time. People wear it like a badge, as if mercy automatically makes them moral. But Machiavelli would laugh at such naivete. Because in the world of power, blind forgiveness isn't virtue. It's voluntary blindness. Forgiveness without memory is suicide. Every betrayal, every humiliation, every scar, they're not just emotional events. They're data. And the man who erases data repeats destruction. When someone wrongs you, don't rush to forgive. Sit with it. Study it. Dissect the betrayal like an autopsy. Where did you ignore your intuition? What weakness did they exploit? What truth about human nature did you fail to see? This isn't bitterness, it's strategy. The weak forgive because they want peace. The strong remember because they want precision. Peace means nothing if it blinds you to patterns. If you forgive the snake and walk barefoot again, you're not holy, you're prey. Machiavelli didn't preach cruelty. He preached clarity. He knew that power belongs to those who observe human nature as it is, not as they wish it to be. Every scar is a signal, evidence of a rule you ignored or a truth you resisted. To forget is to destroy the lesson. So don't erase your pain with empty compassion. Document it in your mind like a tactician marking a battlefield. Because one day, the same situation will appear, and this time you'll know where to strike. Forgiveness, in the Machiavellian sense, doesn't mean pretending it never happened. It means detaching emotion after extracting the wisdom. You don't carry hate. Hate poisons the strategist. You carry memory. Memory protects him. There's a difference between healing and forgetting. Healing means the wound no longer controls you. Forgetting means you've thrown away the map that could have saved you later. The goal is not mercy. The goal is mastery. Think of your scars as archives. Each one contains a principle. Who can be trusted? Where your boundaries are weak. What your instincts tried to warn you about. How people behave when power shifts. Read those archives often. The strong man doesn't dwell on pain, he minds it. He extracts patterns, builds rules, and refines his code of conduct. That's how great generals are made. They lose once, then they study the loss until defeat becomes impossible. You don't rise by forgiving the past. You rise by understanding it so deeply that it can never touch you the same way again. Every person who betrayed you, every situation that broke you, they were unpaid teachers. Their cruelty was a curriculum. Forgive them? No, thank them silently, because they gave you something comfort never could, awareness. That awareness is what separates prey from predator, pawn from player. When you know how humans betray, you know how they can be controlled. When you know how pain feels, you know how to weaponize endurance. Forgive nothing, but let go of the emotion. You don't need to hate anyone. Hatred wastes energy that could be used to build empires. Be cold, be clinical. Smile when you see your enemies, not because you've forgotten, but because you've evolved. They gave you the lessons. You took the power. That's real forgiveness, not emotional mercy, but psychological sovereignty. Most people confuse compassion with compliance. They think being kind means being naive. But the Machiavellian man understands that mercy has its place only when it serves a purpose. Mercy without memory is weakness. Mercy with awareness is dominance. So no, don't forgive easily. Observe, learn, adapt. When you rise, rise with every scar intact, polished, not hidden, because the world doesn't respect saints. It respects strategists. And every strategist you've ever admired had one rule in common. Never forget a lesson paid for in pain. Forgive nothing. Learn everything. And let every scar sharpen your strategy for the empire you're about to build. 8. Suffering ends when you outgrow it. Most people wait for their pain to disappear. They pray for peace, hope for healing, and waste years trying to feel normal again. But pain doesn't leave. It doesn't vanish because you cry long enough, journal enough, or meditate enough. No, pain stays. It just loses power when you outgrow it. That's the cold rule, not of comfort, but of transformation. You don't heal by escaping suffering. You transcend it. You become the kind of person it can no longer touch. Suffering is like a storm. Weak men build shelters and hide until it passes. Strong men learn to walk in it, and eventually they become the storm. That's why most people never evolve. They think healing means relief, but real healing means reinvention. It means breaking yourself down to rebuild a stronger structure, not waiting for the wind to stop. When Machiavelli wrote about control, he wasn't just speaking about politics or rulers. He was speaking about psychology. He understood that men who cannot master their suffering can never master the world. Your suffering is a mirror. It reflects the version of you that still resists reality. The old self, the emotional self, the fearful self, the self that wants comfort, is the one in pain. Outgrow that self, and the pain no longer finds a place to live. That's why growth often feels like death, because it is. It's the slow execution of the weaker version of you. Every time you refuse to react, to complain, to spiral, you're killing an outdated layer of yourself. The pain doesn't go away, it just becomes irrelevant. The things that once destroyed you become background noise. You stop taking life personally. You stop expecting fairness. You stop needing closure. You simply see and move strategically. The weak want the world to change so they can feel better. The strong change themselves so the world no longer matters. That's the Machiavellian way. Cold, clear, and effective. The moment you stop negotiating with your pain, stop asking when will it end, you begin to rise. Because the question itself keeps you chained. It assumes pain controls you. But pain is just information. It's showing you where you're still human, where you still care too much, react too fast, or expect too little from yourself. You don't get rid of suffering. You consume it. You use it as data. You convert it into patience, discipline, and unbreakable will. That's how the fire that once burned you becomes the same fire that forges you. Think about it, the strongest version of you, calm, grounded, dangerous, is built from all the pain you thought you couldn't survive. Every heartbreak made you sharper. Every loss made you colder. Every betrayal made you more strategic. That's not trauma. That's transformation. You don't heal pain by avoiding it. You heal it by extracting its lessons so completely that you no longer fear its return. That's when it ends, not because it left, but because you evolved beyond it. Machiavelli would tell you, stop praying for comfort. Start preparing for control. You don't need the pain to vanish. You just need to become someone who can carry it without shaking. That's the man who wins. Because when nothing disturbs you, nothing can manipulate you. Suffering stops being suffering the moment you stop being the version of yourself that suffers. The world stays cold. Life stays unfair. But you become untouchable. That's what rebirth truly means. It's not about finding light. It's about mastering darkness so thoroughly that it obeys you. You don't escape suffering. You evolve beyond its reach. And when you do, the world looks the same, but you don't. You've gone from victim to vessel, from the burned to the blacksmith, from the wounded to the weapon. That's rebirth. That's power. That's the cold rule. Suffering was never meant to destroy you. It was meant to design you. Every betrayal, every loss, every sleepless night was a forge, and you were the weapon being shaped inside it. The weak beg for relief. The strong study the pain until it speaks, and when it does, it reveals the only truth worth knowing. You were never meant to be comfortable. You were meant to be formidable. The men who rise from their suffering don't come back softer. They return sharper. They move differently. They speak less. They stop chasing peace and start building power. Because they've learned that in this world, peace belongs only to those strong enough to enforce it. Machiavelli understood that suffering is the tax every great mind pays for clarity. It strips away illusion until only strategy remains. And when you finally stop asking for ease and start asking for edge, you become the kind of person the world can no longer break. You don't recover from pain. You reincarnate through it. That's the cold rule. And once you accept it, your rebirth begins. If this spoke to the fire in you, then stop running from the storm and learn to command it. Subscribe and join the Guru Clan, a brotherhood of men who turn pain into power. Your next evolution begins here.